We live. What's going on? What's going on here?
You are unhinged. It can be very entertaining, don't get me wrong. But you cross a line when you do that, right? You're almost 60 years old, dude. Act like it. Each took credit for the Montreal Screwjob, but Cornette is more than happy to give Russo all the credit for the Brawl. And Russo happily takes credit for coming up with it, although by the end of the episode, he does seem to have some regrets as he's watching it back in light of what we know now about concussions and CTE. Yeah, I love all these wrestlers and these wrestling promoters and these wrestling writers and personalities. And Russo is not the only one. I've heard Tommy Dreamer talk about this. A lot of people talk about this. Oh, we didn't know. We didn't know. You know, in light of what we know now, and look, I get that CTE is a term that nobody even knew, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, didn't exist. But do you really need the benefit of hindsight to know that getting hit repeatedly, dead on, in the fucking skull with a steel chair probably isn't a good idea?
His head was gone.
Oh, we didn't know. Who knew? Who could have known back then that getting hit full force in the head with a chair might cause concussions and might scramble people's brains? Yeah, who knew? So they go all the way back here at the beginning of this episode. And Russo was talking about that period in the mid-90s in WWE, when he basically, around the time he would have taken over as the head writer. They had just gone through this period with these awful characters. They talked about the Goon and TL
The
Hunter,
Goon.
and they
I remember that.
And had footage of Mantar. Half man, half tar, I guess.
The Goon.
Right? Vince McMahon said half man, half beast. I say half man, half tar. And so Russo thought that, this is terrible. These characters are shit. This is not the direction that the company should be going in. People wanted more of a behind the
Oh,
scenes
no.
look. They wanted
Don't you start your bullshit. Oh, no.
Of course, then they showed
Hold it right there.
Cornette.
Hold on, Jason. Shoot. Start your bullshit now. No, I'm talking about Jason. I'm talking about something else. Got enough shit going on. What is this about? I thought that was Joker for a second. That's who is this? Austin. And he hurt himself. Thanking me. Thank me. Thank you. Thanking me for. I didn't do nothing. That's a cute one. Know about thanking me, but okay. Know about that. I don't know who the hell this is. Okay, so I'm private and I don't know you. I don't know who she is. What the thanking me? It's like, okay. What are you thanking me about? How'd you get in here? You supposed to. Yeah, where did you come from? It was getting bored, so I I just said, what the hell? What in the hell? He said, what did that guy say? He said, what the Sam Hill? And check this out. Sam Hill wasn't even a real person. I said, what the? So he wasn't even a real person. Oh, you didn't say. Okay, let me get back to Jason. I forgot about that. Let's get back to him. I was listening to that. Okay, where is he? There he is.
Despises when people use the word fake. He must not be a fan this week of Ronda Rousey, I guess. I'll talk about her later. But to him, nothing fake about the abuse that these guys put their bodies through. He's going, on his usual spiel. And Cornette's talking about Vince McMahon. He says, look, WWE is all that Vince McMahon knows. It's his life. He doubts that he's been to the grocery store or seen a movie.
Wow, how about that?
40 years. Not true. Not true. I remember reading that when There's Something About Mary came out, they would
I'm not going to be here long. I'm just bored.
That was probably right around the Attitude Era.
Let me cut him off for a second. I'll be here long. I'm just bored. It's boring and it's hot as hell out there. I don't like bees flying in my face.
Right around this time. Might have been that year, in fact. Might have been 98 when that movie came out.
Listening to Jason
it's like one of his
talk
favorite
shit about
movies.
this,
I don't
about
know
what
if
happened back in the days.
I don't know if Vince has a movie theater in his home. I don't know if somebody brought him the movie. I don't know if he paid the actors to reenact the movie for him right in front of him. I don't know. But I had read that back then. I've seen it mentioned since that There's Something About Mary is like one of his favorite movies. So there's at least one movie, I guess, other than The Chaperone, that Vince McMahon has watched in the last 40 years. But Cornette had this great line. He said, Vince McMahon is a genius and a demon. Sadly, he's more demon than genius these days.
Wow, know about that.
Russo told the story of getting the call to come to Vince McMahon's office, and he thought he was going to be fired. He was writing for the magazine, Raw magazine at that time. And he walks in, and Vince has all of his minions in the room with him. Jim Ross is there, Pat Patterson, Bruce Pritchard, Jim Cornette. They're all in there. And Vince had a copy of the Raw magazine on the desk. He slammed it down on the desk, and he said, this is what the product needs to be on TV. And from that point on, Vince Russo became the head writer for WWE. And Cornette, of course, he thought Russo was a goof. And all he wanted to do was turn wrestling into the Jerry Springer show. And Russo admits, he says, look, I would literally sit there, bro, and write the shows with Jerry Springer on in the background. He would write the shows with Jerry Springer on in the background. Russo said he was writing for college kids that would get together every Monday night. Remember WCW Monday Night Show? He used to have the Nitro parties. So Russo was trying to write for the college demographic. He was trying to grab the casual viewer. So how did the Brawl for All come about? How did this idea get willed into existence? For that, you can thank Vince Russo, and according to Russo, you can thank JBL. Russo made it very clear. He admitted, he goes, I didn't like JBL. I thought he was this loud-mouthed bully. He was very obnoxious. He would always talk, about how tough he was or act all tough. And he said backstage one day in the locker room, he overheard JBL and his big mouth in the back telling everybody that if this were real, I would beat everybody's ass.
I don't know about that now.
Unless their name is Joey Styles.
Know about that.
JBL cannot beat Joey Styles.
He's not beating Shamrock. Know about that.
So Russo hears this. He's bothered by this. And he goes to Vince McMahon and conceives, I guess, of this idea of the Brawl. Now, this is Russo's version of events, so take it with a grain of salt. This is how he explains how the whole idea came to be. He went to Vince McMahon with this idea, and Vince McMahon approved it. So then we're introduced to Bart Gunn, the winner of the Brawl for All. They interviewed him here for the episode. And Bart Gunn, he was one half of the Smoking Guns. He had been split up from Billy. Billy had moved on by this point. He was doing the DX thing, the New Age Outlaws. He was a bigger star than Bart. Bart's career was just kind of fizzling out. He was doing this NWA revival thing of the Midnight Express, Bodacious Bart, and Bombastic Bob, or whatever the fuck their names were. So Bruce Pritchard, he approaches Bart with this idea. Hey, we got this idea for this thing called the Brawl for All, and he thought it was dumb. Until Kevin Kelly had a conversation with him, and he explained that the winner would get, I think it was $100,000. Jericho on the episode, he claimed it was $75,000 because Jericho does the narration for all these episodes. He claimed it was $75K. Bob Holly in his book said that they were told it was $100,000. Point is, they would get a big payoff, and on top of the money, they would get a run with Steve Austin for the championship. So the idea of getting a run with the top guy and making top pay, that was too good for Bart to say no to, so he said, sure, I'll be part of it. Now, Russo says he thought the Godfather was probably the toughest guy in the locker room. They interviewed the Godfather. Godfather always looks happy. Godfather, I love Godfather. Godfather always has a smile on his face. He's living life. He retired. He does the cameos every now and then, or like a surprise Royal Rumble appearance. But otherwise, he's happily retired. He's running his business. He's got his Cheetahs Club out there in Vegas. He's around all the beautiful women. This guy is living large. So they interview Charles Wright. They run through all of his various gimmicks. This episode was already a winner at this point. We had mentions of Mantar and Papa Shango on this episode. We're only like barely 10 minutes in. But he admits, he says the Godfather was his favorite of all the characters. I'm sure it was. He goes, my favorite of all the characters, in his words, he goes, selling white girls. That was my gimmick on TV, and he loved it. When he left wrestling, as I said, I believe he's still running that Cheetahs Club out there in Vegas. They interviewed Darren Drozdov for the episode. I didn't expect to see Droz on here, but they interviewed Droz. He's still wheelchair bound after all these years, but he seems to be, otherwise healthy and happy and in good spirits. Good sense of humor about all this stuff. They even showed the clip from Beyond the Mat when Vince McMahon met him for the first time. From, he's gonna puke. I always turn away when they show that, but they had the whole segment. They showed the whole clip. So Jim Ross is also interviewed for this. I don't know why Jim Ross always comes across as being very pissed off, very, very, very annoyed when they interviewed him for these episodes so far. Maybe they got him on a bad day. I don't know. But Jim Ross is talking about this, and he didn't shut the idea down in his mind right away because, as he said, you don't know how it's going to go until you try it. And they aired a clip from Bruce Pritchard's podcast. They interviewed Pritchard last season for the show, but obviously now, with him being in WWE, I guess they couldn't interview him directly. But they played a clip from his podcast with Conrad of him talking about the Brawl for All and explaining how the matches were made. It was totally random. He says, we had a brown paper bag. Savio Vega reached in and drew the names, and that's how the brackets were supposedly chosen. They were supposedly chosen at random. Now, the Brawl for All rules, it was 3 one-minute rounds. You get 5 points for the most punches landed in a round.
I remember that.
A takedown is good for 5 points. Knockdowns were 10 points. And a knockout would obviously end the fight. So then we get to the participants. We have Bradshaw, who, remember, according to Vince Russo, the whole reason behind this entire tournament even happening was Bradshaw and his big mouth. So Bradshaw's in there. Mark Merrow, who was a legit Golden Gloves boxing champion early in his career. This guy could throw down. Mark Canterbury, the former Henry O. Godwin, he was in there. Savio Vega, Brackus, remember Brackus? Who gives a shit? He never went anywhere. He was in there. Road Warrior Hawk, Droz, Pierre Ouellette, who has one eye. They put a one-eyed man in this, a PCO. They put a one-eyed PCO in this tournament, which tells you the wisdom of the people who work there. The Godfather, Dan the Beast Severn, who dropped out after his first round win because he said he had nothing left to prove. He thought it would damage his reputation being a part of this. And also because he had already cashed the bonus check that they had given him for agreeing to even participate in the tournament. Once that check was cleared, once that check was cashed, he wisely cashed out his chips and said goodbye. Too Cold Scorpio, he was in there. Not a guy that I'd want to mess with. 8 Ball from DOA. Bob Holly, Bart Gunn, Dr. Death, Steve Williams, who had signed with WWE months earlier and wrestled exactly one dark match up to that point. He wrestled a dark match in April of '98 against Too Cold Scorpio. Vince McMahon even introduced him to the ring for it. And he did not debut in the ring on TV until the Brawl for All, with the expectation that he would win the entire thing, and he was then going to be groomed for a program with the other Steve Williams. That was Steve Austin's real name at the time. I believe Austin has legally changed his name since then, since he retired. He is now legally Steve Austin. But he too was also Steve Williams back then. And Steve Blackman was also in the tournament. I could see why Vince McMahon wanted Steven Regal to change his name to William later on. There were a lot of Steves in this company at that time. Steve Austin, Steve Williams, Steve Blackman, Steven Regal. So in his book, The Hardcore Truth, which I highly recommend, Bob Holly said that as soon as Blackman found out that he was in the tournament, he started training for it. And he was dead serious about hurting people for that $100,000 that the winner was promised. He was going to take out their knees. Blackman told him, I'm going to take out their knees and I'm going to win that money. So one day they're all gathered in the back for a meeting. And I don't know who was leading the meeting, if it was Vince, if it was Bruce Pritchard, or who it would have been, I don't know. But the rules were being explained to all the guys. And they were told anything goes. Those are the original rules. There were no rules. Anything goes. Maybe you can't use a weapon, but otherwise there really were no rules. And Blackman, he said,